Oh, Rob, another PRC film with Hugh Beaumont? Really? Oh, heck yeah. Old public domain poverty row crime films of the 1940s, to me, are treasure of the magnitude of King Tutankhamun. I love these old films and I can't get my fill. And heck, this one has Mary Beth Hughes as well. So, yeah, you're in for a treat today. The Lady Confesses from 1945 was a murder mystery thriller directed by Sam Newfield and starring Mary Beth Hughes and Hugh Beaumont, and tells the story of deception, secrets, and betrayal. And this was an enjoyable and short PRC crime film. And I'll give a summary of the film, spoiler free as it has a doozy of a twist, and then offer some closing thoughts on the film. Well, the film opens up with the lovely Mary Beth Hughes as the brunette Vicky McGuire. She's normally blonde in a lot of the films I've seen her in. And she answers the door for the character Norma Craig, actress Barbara Slater. And she tells Vicky that the man that she is planning to marry is actually her husband. He's married to me, and I'll see that you never marry him. Oh, I'm doing you a favor, though. And then this Norma Craig character just leaves abruptly. I mean, what a nutty start to a film. But things are going to get even crazier, believe you me. Well, Vicky gets on the phone and tries to reach out to her guy. And her guy, it would turn out, is a very drunken character named Larry, played by Leave It to Beaver dad Hugh Beaumont. He's there getting pickled at the 7-Eleven Club. Now, a very catchy musical number is going on. It's All Your Fault, performed by the character Lucille Compton, actress Claudia Drake. Now, the drunken Larry staggers into an office and he talks with his friend Lucky Brandon, actor Edmund McDonald. He owns the club, and he questions if Larry has maybe had a few too many drinks. Well, Larry staggers out, chats a little bit with Lucille, who says that maybe he should take a nap and kind of sleep off his drunken state because he's pretty plastered. Now, after a brief nap, Larry wakes up a little more sober to answer a call at the bar. And on the way, he spots Lucky leaving, but he's unable to get his attention as he leaves the building. He takes a call, and it's Vicky, who wants to see him to talk about this strange woman who's claiming to be married to him. So they go for a drive together, and Larry seems pretty chill about the whole situation and says he's going to go and straighten things out. He goes in, and he tells a man there that he wants to meet with his wife. And it's here that we get to the shocker of the film. Norma has been killed. And the man that he is speaking to, he's one of the police investigators there at the scene of the crime. Homicide Detective Captain Brown, played by actor Emmett Vogan, informs them that Norma had been strangled. And while both provide their alibis, they're still a little bit suspect. The detective and Larry go back to the 7-Eleven Club, and they talk to the bartender, and they also talk to Lucille, all of whom confirm his story about being there and drunk and sleeping and so on. However, when they talk with Lucky, he denies seeing Larry in his office that night, even though we're pretty sure that he was there and saw him earlier. Well, the detective talks with Lucky alone, and he seems curious about his alibi and why Lucky had left that night, since Norma was a former friend of his who had an interest in the 7-Eleven Club. Seems mighty suspicious, if you ask me. He finally interviews Vicky alone to ask a few more questions, and then the next day, Larry and Vicky, they go out to eat, and they're visited by that detective again. Now, he's very driven to find out what's going on. He wants to know things like why Larry had divorced Norma, and did it have anything to do with her involvement with the 7-Eleven Club, and so on. Larry seems unclear why Lucky wouldn't alibi for him, and why he just left that night under mysterious circumstances. Now, it's here that the film picks up a little bit, as Vicky gets the idea to go into full undercover mode. In a way, becomes the star of the movie, too. She gets a gig at the 7-Eleven Club, becoming the club photographer. And she's going to kind of use this to snoop around and try and find some clues. Now, while she's in the dark room a little bit later, Lucky is there and talks to her and gets a little too close, a little too friendly, but Vicky resists. And she talks to the attendant there a little bit later and finds out that Lucy had apparently been romantically involved with Lucky until Norma, a former lover, had reappeared at the club a few days before. Lucy, you remember, is one of the singers, the performers at the club. So a little bit later, Vicky overhears an argument between Lucy and Lucky in which Lucy declares that she knows that Lucky went to Norma's the night of her murder. "I'll talk to you about that later," he says, and leaves. Well, Vicky tries to cheer up Lucy, who's really kind of distraught about all of this, and finds out a little bit more about Norma. She doesn't reveal much before she has to go back on stage, though, to sing again. Now, the next day, Larry and Vicky are having lunch together, and Larry wants her to stop this undercover stuff because he's worried about her. But she assures him that Captain Brown is kind of nearby and kind of keeping an eye on her. Now, Lucky comes in and just happens to spot the two of them together, Larry eating with her, so he's kind of getting a little suspicious of their relationship as well. Now, later at the club, Vicky is snooping around in Lucky's office when Steve appears and comes on really friendly. Give Stevie a little kiss, that sort of thing. Lucky comes in and sends him off and then wonders, wait a minute, Vicky, what are you doing there in my office? And she makes an excuse about needing more plates for her camera, so he gets them for her, and she's good. But Lucky cautions her to be careful. She leaves, and Lucky then realizes that something is missing from his desk, and he hurriedly takes off from the club. Vicky, still in detective mode, follows him in a cab to Norma's house and spies on him. And we see that Lucky retrieves his monogrammed fountain pen from Norma's couch. Now, back at the club, Lucky is confronted by Lucy again. Now, this time she's got a gun, and while he tries to disarm her, the gun accidentally goes off. People all kind of show up to wonder what's going on, and Lucky assures everybody it was an accident that it went off, and he asks Vicky to take Lucy back home as, she's kind of shaken up. Vicky heads home with Lucy and sees her safely to her apartment and even offers to stay to keep her company for a while, but she refuses. So Vicky leaves. Lucy is alone, and it's here that we see a mysterious reflection in the mirror, and who could that be in the shadows? Well, with not much of the film left, no surprises and no spoilers, so you have to see the ending of this one for yourself. This PRC goodie is in the public domain, and trust me, there are tons of copies out there, so you can go and catch the exciting ending for yourself. Now, some closing thoughts about this. When The Lady Confesses was released in 1945 by PRC, it's one of those Poverty Row studios from old Hollywood, and a lot of their films are wonderfully in the public domain. And it was directed by Sam Newfield. There were other titles, working titles for this film, like Undercover Girl, and that's a little more accurate. The other working title, Ladies of the Night, no, I don't know about that. Now, my thoughts on this one was that this was a by-the-numbers detective story with an interesting mystery to solve. And I will admit that watching this, it led me along with some fun twists and red herrings. And it's a very fun story. Mary Beth Hughes and Hugh Beaumont were entertaining in the lead roles. And I really liked how this one plays out differently than you expect. Honestly, I thought going into this film that it was going to be Hugh Beaumont's character, Larry, that would drive the investigation. He's a suspect for the murder with a sketchy alibi. He's got to clear his name. But honestly, it's Mary Beth Hughes' character, Vicky, that's really front and center in the film. And she's really great as this spunky, unexpected investigator. I've seen numerous films on my channel with Mary Beth Hughes, and I just adore her as an actress. She is not overly what you would call glamorous, but instead more of that sweet, wholesome girl-next-door quality to her. And it's fun to see her in a role like this one, where she's essentially the main investigator, out to go undercover and unravel the mystery and clear Larry's name. Her character's determined and resourceful and brave as she goes undercover at the club. And I do realize maybe it's a little strange that nobody at the club seemed to recognize her because, she's like Larry's girlfriend, kind of making you wonder how no one would notice this, but whatever. Her character shows she's not afraid to go undercover and interact with some sketchy characters like that lucky fellow or even that amorous bartender Steve. By the way, if you haven't seen Mary Beth Hughes before as an actress, This is, to me at least, somewhat uncommon to see her as a brunette. Most of the times I've seen her in movies, she's blonde haired, notably in several of the Lloyd Nolan, Michael Shayne films. Speaking of those, if you'd like to see her really shine in another role, I'd recommend the film Sleepers West, and not just because I'm a huge fan of Lloyd Nolan films, but because she's really charming in that film and almost seems to overshadow Lloyd Nolan and the other actors of that particular film. It's another fun murder mystery as well. I thought Hugh Beaumont was great in this film, and obviously most people know him as Ward Cleaver of Leave It to Beaver. But once again here we see that he can play sketchier characters and darker crime films as well. He's really got a fascinating background, and the more I read and learn about him, I'll probably explore in a future biography video. You know that Hugh Beaumont was a devout Methodist. He had originally studied for the clergy, but eventually switched to acting. And yet he would still remain active as a lay minister throughout his acting career. It's really a fascinating background that he has. And I enjoyed him in this role here. It's a very good, driven character, and not really what you expect. And you know, I'm really starting to appreciate Sam Newfield's direction, namely for old crime films, as he does a great job with utilizing the visuals of figures and shadow and, you know, the mysterious 40s era fedora wearing guy in the dark, you know, that sort of thing. He does that well, even considering that a lot of these PRC films tended to be lower budget. He worked well with what he was given. And, you know, there's a couple spots in the film I just wanted to talk about because they stood out to me. I thought they were really well crafted. For instance, in this scene, look at how the detective's face is framed as he carefully listens to the dialogue. You know, this one with Vicky's face in shadow, that kind of leaves you with uncertainty. And he does this with characters in his films. He'll often hide their face in darkness and shadow. When you can't see a face or the expression of a person in a film, it kind of builds on your suspicion and your sense of trust. Is this person who they say they are? Maybe they aren't what they seem, you know, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of just well done artistry to Sam Newfield's direction. Anyhow, let me wrap this one up. The Lady Confesses from 1945 was just, I thought it was a great crime thriller with Mary Beth Hughes and Hugh Beaumont. It involved murder, secrets and deception, an undercover woman, and a surprising ending. So it's a good film. It's really enjoyable, and I would say this is one worth checking out.